Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we are going to unravel a bit of a mystery behind what looks like, well, a perfectly standard 17.3 mile stretch of California concrete. I mean, at first glance, a freeway is just a freeway, right? It gets you from point A to point B. But whether you're stuck in daily traffic or you just kind of wonder how your own city is designed, the story hidden beneath the asphalt of this particular route really matters. It's honestly one of the most fascinating tales of modern American infrastructure. We're talking about a real game changer here, a massive story of ambition, rebellion, unprecedented legal battles, and a fundamental shift in how we actually build our world. Let's just jump right in and hit you with a number that is, frankly, staggering. $2.25 billion, that was the final absolute total price tag of the I-105 project. When they finally laid the last bit of pavement, it broke records as the most expensive single public works contract in the history of California. To put that into perspective, we are talking about a cost of over $100 million for every single mile they built. Even today, that is a monumental sum of money for a transportation corridor. But wait, because what's perhaps even more jaw-dropping than that budget is the timeline. 35 years. Yeah, 35 years. That's literally how long it took from the moment planners first started sketching lines on a map to the day the very first cars actually drove on it. And this plunges us directly into the core question of our explainer today: how on earth did a relatively simple 17-mile road take 3.5 decades and over $2 billion to finish? So the road in question is Interstate 105. You'll commonly hear it called the Century Freeway, mostly because its route roughly parallels Century Boulevard, which marks the 100th Street position in the LA grid. Officially, it's also the Glenn Anderson Freeway, named after the California congressman who just relentlessly pushed for it to get done. But the thing you need to know is the I-105 isn't just another highway. It's the project that quite literally revolutionized how American infrastructure is planned.
Part 1. Drawing the route. The 1950s vision.
To really wrap our heads around this, we actually need to rewind all the way back to 1958. Dwight D. Eisenhower is president, the post-war American boom is in full swing, and the whole mentality of the era is basically just, let's move as many cars as possible, as fast as possible, straight through the city. So Caltrans starts drawing up plans for what was supposed to be a massive 10-lane concrete behemoth. By 1968, the route is officially on the books. By 1970, they've done 19 different design studies, and at this point, the estimated cost was a comparatively small $447 million. But then, 1972 rolls around, and they hit a massive roadblock, the Keith v. Volpon lawsuit.
That lawsuit didn't come out of nowhere. It was fueled by an immense human cost. The original route demanded the demolition of over 5,000 parcels of land. It carved a path straight through largely low-income African-American neighborhoods, basically displacing thousands of families. And kind of ground these big statistics for a second, this sweep actually wiped out some major cultural landmarks, too. The childhood home of the Beach Boys Wilson Brothers in Hawthorne? Demolished. The childhood home of the Carpenters in Downey? Razed to the ground. All just to make way for the freeway.
Part 2. The people push back. The 1970s revolt. So, by the early 70s, that old bulldoze everything in our path mentality was suddenly colliding head-on with a rapidly changing culture. You've got the environmental movement gaining serious traction. You've got the 1971 Sylmar earthquake raising all sorts of structural fears. Plus, a growing tax revolt in California meant people were super wary of the state spending billions. People were just not willing to step aside anymore. In February 1972, this frustration boils over into a monumental class action lawsuit. The plaintiffs, which included local residents, the NAACP, the Sierra Club, and the Environmental Defense Fund, basically charged that the project violated civil rights, offered terrible relocation help, and totally ignored the new National Environmental Policy Act.
This massive case lands on the desk of federal judge Harry Pergerson, and he does something huge. He legally freezes the entire development. He basically said, hold on, nothing moves forward until this project fully complies with environmental and relocation laws. This single injunction stopped the bulldozers in their tracks for years. It forced the state of California completely off the construction site and straight to the negotiating table with the communities they were about to pave over.
Part 3. The unprecedented compromise, the consent decree.
The result of all those intense negotiations were the 1979 and 1981 consent decrees, and they completely threw out the old rulebook. They fundamentally shifted the entire philosophy from just moving cars to actually addressing social and environmental impacts. Think about the contrast here. The old 1960s plan was a 10-lane monolith, causing massive displacement with zero mass transit. The new 1980s plan, it slimmed the freeway down to 6 general lanes,
added 2 carpool lanes, and put a metro rail line right down the median. And perhaps most incredibly, it legally mandated the construction of 3,700 replacement housing units. The state wasn't just building a road anymore, right? They were literally forced to build communities. These mitigation efforts were staggering. They created the Century Freeway housing program. They set up a pre-apprenticeship training program and a women's outreach program, which successfully trained thousands of women and minorities in the building trades so they could actually get paid to work on the project that was disrupting their own neighborhoods. They even established an affirmative action committee to make sure local minority and women-owned businesses got a big slice of the construction contracts. Part 4. Anatomy of the I-105. The final blueprint. Okay, so when they finally break ground in 1982, the financial breakdown of this new blueprint is unlike anything anyone had ever seen. You might just assume that the $2.25 billion went straight into buying concrete and asphalt, but check out this distribution. Yes, $1.25 billion went to actual construction, but an incredible $680 million went just to purchasing the right-of-way, and another $320 million was spent entirely on housing. Over a quarter of this freeway's massive, record-breaking budget was diverted specifically to buying land and building replacement homes. That is a real paradigm shift. Now, aside from the housing side of things, the engineering itself was a total marvel. I mean, the I-105 crosses through 9 different cities, and it had to seamlessly connect with 4 other massive, heavily trafficked freeways, the 405, the 110, the 710, and the 605. That massive, towering 5-level interchange where the 105 meets the 110, they actually named it the Judge Harry Pregerson Interchange. It stands as a permanent, multi-story concrete monument to the very judge who paused the project in the first place to protect the local residents. To truly grasp the sheer physical scale of this thing, get this. It took 2.5 million cubic yards of concrete. It took 115,000 tons of steel. They had to build 25 miles of sound walls just to buffer the neighborhoods from the roar of the traffic. They integrated 10 full metro light rail stations directly into the design. And, just as a fun little fact, they used 100,000 bots dots to divide the lanes. You know, those little raised reflectors that go thump-thump when you accidentally drift over the line?
Part 5. A concrete legacy. Was it worth it?
When the Century Freeway finally opened its lanes to the public on October 14, 1993, which again was 35 years after the first studies began, absolutely no other public works project in California history had ever been subjected to such a rigorous environmental and social analysis. Nothing even came close. No other project had ever provided more replacement homes, more local job training, or more careful cleanup of hazardous materials. It literally forced the government to look at the people living in the path of progress, not as obstacles to just be bulldozed over, but as real stakeholders who deserved to be protected. Which leaves us with a really fascinating final thought to ponder. Were those 35 years of legal battles, endless delays, and that staggering $2.25 billion price tag simply the cost of bloated bureaucracy holding up a road? Or was it the absolute necessary price we had to pay to finally integrate modern environmental and social justice into the way we build our cities? It's a huge question. Next time you're cruising down a highway, maybe take a second to think about exactly what it took to put that road beneath your tires. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer, and remember to always keep questioning the world around you.